There you go. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Quincy School Committee for Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Superintendent, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bergoli? Present. Mrs. Cahill?
Present.
Mr. Gattro? Present. Mrs. Hubley? Present. Mrs. Lebo? Present. Mrs. Perrios? Present. Mayor Coe? Present. North Quincy High School Student Representative Anthony Della. Thank you for your service.
Well said. You stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No memoriam? Any memoriams? No. Okay. At this time, we have open forum, which is an opportunity for community input regarding the Quincy Public Schools. Community in this context is defined as a resident of the city of Quincy, a non-resident parent of a student who attends the Quincy Public Schools, or a non-resident employee of the Quincy Public Schools. After giving his or her name and address, each speaker may make a presentation of no more than 3 minutes to the school committee. An individual may not exchange their time or yield to others. Residents or non-community persons may submit written statements of up to 300 words to the school committee at qscopenforum@quincypublicschools.com by 4 p.m. of the day prior to the posted school committee regular meeting. Written statements will be posted on the school committee section of the school's website by noon on the day of the posted school committee regular meeting. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak at open forum?
Good evening. Tom Leung, 40 Huntley Road. I want to say 3 things. First, I was encouraged last meeting when this committee used the terms fundamental fairness, common sense, and courtesy when discussing the idling policy for school pickup. And tonight, I want to ask this committee to apply those principles to the morning drop-off process at Quincy High School. So as you may or may not know, every morning there's a line at the bend of Huntley Road, right, where parents queue up on the wrong side of the double yellow line to drop off their kids. At the same time, if I'm coming back from dropping my kids off at their school, I have to get around this line. And lately, the other side of the road has been blocked off, right? And so it is the expectation that residents that have to access their homes have to wait in that line. So that seems neither fair nor courteous nor common sense. So I urge this committee to convene a meeting of stakeholders and find a better solution. Second, the lawn behind the 2 administrative buildings on Seville is being used as effectively a dog park. So that's another data point for your issue with dog waste that you mentioned last time. And finally, I wanted to thank Mr. Gattro for his 2 decades of service. That is quite admirable and impressive that a hometown guy devoted so much of his life in service of his community and neighbors. So enjoy your retirement or whatever is next for you. But thank you for your service. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor, Ms. Cahill, and fellow members of the school committee. So I learn something new every time I come to these meetings. Started coming here in October. The last meeting earlier this month, awesome. Learning about the CVT program, the early college in high school. I got home pretty late, so I sort of woke my son up. He was getting ready for bed, so he wasn't asleep yet. But I was telling him all these things, and I had to stop myself. It's like, oh, I'll tell you more. We'll talk more tomorrow. But amazing programs. And then looking forward to hear about the update to Della Chiesa from Superintendent Movi. It's great to hear that we have all these initiatives in the city for new schools, refurbishing current structures. In the meantime, I'm telling my coworkers, they're like, in Melrose, they're a couple 4.2 million short in their budget. Recently saw in the news that Boston's closing 4 schools. And then North Andover, some similar deal. And it sounds like Braintree might be considering closing the school, but we're doing the opposite. So awesome. And then just same thing with Mr. Guttrow. Thank you for your service. That's all. Thank you.
Can you just give us your name and address?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Kylie, 42 President's Ave.
thank you. Okay, we good? All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Superintendent.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Our first item on the agenda tonight is student recognitions. As you may know, Project 351 is a statewide service organization that brings together 8th grade students from every city and town in Massachusetts. On Saturday, January 25th, students participated in an in-person day of service project at different locations, which they will tell you about tonight. I'm looking forward to that. I do want to congratulate the following Quincy Public Schools Project 351 ambassadors for 2025. At Southwest Middle School, we have Jackson Davis. At Broad Meadows Middle School, we have David DeBoner. At Atlantic, we have Thu Nguyen. At Central Middle School, we have Maysara Rahman. And at Point Webster, we have Yang Kang Wu. And I want to make sure all of these students are congratulated. We're going to ask each one of you to come up to tell us about your projects. And of course, I do also want to recognize all the middle school principals who are here tonight. Principal DeCristofaro, Principal Ahern, Principal Mitchell, Principal Schneller, and Principal Barrett. If you want to come in and join us. And we'll ask the first student from Southwest, Jackson Davis, to come forward and tell us a little bit about your project.
Hello, my name is Jackson Davis. I'm an ambassador for Project 351, and I go to Southwest Middle School. When I was first told that I was selected to be an ambassador for Project 351, I was excited and at the same time surprised. I never thought I would ever be selected for something so important. On launch day, January 25th, I was excited but at the same time anxious. That day, I made new friends and I got to help the community by making packs of rice and beans for the people experiencing California wildfires and cold weather packs for the homeless. I really enjoyed my experience and I look forward to helping out our own community with a clothing drive that is in the works. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jackson. And next, I'd like to call Broad Meadows Student Ambassador David DeBona to tell us a little about your project.
Hello, I am David DeBona. I go to Broad Meadows Middle School, and I am honored to be able to join 351. And I was happy and surprised to be able to go around and help other people. And I would, at the 351 day, we went out and we made hygiene bags for kids that don't have enough to buy their own or be able to go out. So we made those, and I enjoyed the day. I made new friends like Jackson did, and I just had a great time. And I am excited to have the clothing drive and see more kids have things that we have so we can all share together. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. Next is our Atlantic Middle School Ambassador, Thu Nguyen.
Hi, my name is Tu Nguyen, but you can just call me Kels. I am so glad that I'm part of Atlantic and just the Quincy itself because I am selected to be a part of Project 351. And I just want to thank my principal and everyone surrounding me. And with that thankfulness, I really want to just pass it on instead of giving it back. And by passing it on, I hope to continue more community service. And at launch day, I was able to go to Cradles to Crayons. And with that experience, I was able to apply that to schools. And now I'm working with Parker, Squantum, I think Montclair, and my school, Atlantic itself. I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm excited. I hope you'll remember me because I'll make a good impact in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Thu. Next is our Central Middle School Ambassador, Maysara Rahman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aisara Rahman, and I'm Central's 8th grade ambassador. And there were 3 service sites for launch day. It was an absolute pleasure. There was La Colaborativa, Brighton High School, and Cradles Crayons. And so I was at the latter location where the main focus of that organization was fighting children's clothing security. And so my service team and I did that by sorting clothing and shoes based on quality. And before launch day, I kind of expected it to be a kind of a solemn activity just because these issues like clothing insecurity, food insecurity, and homelessness, they're such heavy topics. But to the contrary, it was actually a really lively day. And I learned that, I learned that service is and can and should be joy. That day, I was taught by my peers, my mentors, and the guest speakers that in order to help anyone, you need to emphasize with their circumstances, and consequently, you can provide them happiness, kindness, and a growth mindset. And in fact, we later learned that day that we helped more than 34,000 people. That's more than a third of Quincy's population. And if anything, that number is a testament to how productive our service was and how joyful our service was. Thank you.
Thank you, Maysara. And last but not least is our Point Webster Ambassador, Yang Kang Wu.
Good evening, committee. I would like to first thank you for inviting us on behalf of everyone here for Project 351, and I would like to first thank Principal Barrett for allowing me this opportunity. On the 25th of January, on launch day, I went to Cradles to Crayons, and I cleaned shoes for people so I can give them back out to people more in need. During that day, it was very chaotic. I would have to admit, but it was fun. And as my Sarah said, remind me what you said. It was very fun in general. I'm gonna leave it at that. What else do I have on here? Sorry. I think that's all. I got to the auditorium at JFK for launch day at the start of the day at roughly 7-ish or 8-ish. That's mostly all. I have some flyers here. Does anyone want them?
Sure, we'll take him.
Thank you.
No problem. Great job, thank you. Yeah, we haven't. I can give them that. We're good. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. And if we could have all the students and principals come to the front of the dais here so we can get a picture of the students.
We're going to take a brief recess, so if the students want to leave, you can. You can stay if you want, but we'll open it up so you can leave.
Thank you to the
Thank
parents
you.
as well that are here tonight. Thank you.
All set. Superintendent?
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. And next on the agenda, we're honored that Congressman Stephen Lynch will be visiting Central Middle School on Friday, March 28th, to visit with the eighth grade civics students. Social studies teachers Paul Griffith and Bill Pavo will be moderating as Congressman Lynch shares with the students about his work in Congress and answers their questions. Special thanks to Community Development Director Sean Glennon for his assistance in arranging this visit. And of course, thank you to Principal DeCristofaro for also facilitating this great opportunity for our students at Central. Next is congratulations to the North Quincy High School Academic Decathlon team on qualifying to represent Massachusetts in the upcoming Nationals in Des Moines, Iowa in May. Best wishes to team members Matthew Amador, Louisa Bayenzi, Emily Coe, Matthew Lynn, Marco Mano, Dahani Palawal, Philip Wang, and Stephen Yu as they prepare for the upcoming competition with Coach Benny Diamore. So best of luck to the academic decathlon team at North Quincy High School. We'll be watching to see how you do. Next is the Quincy High School competitive math team secured a commendable seventh place finish at the Southeastern Massachusetts Math League playoffs earlier in March, competing against a field of over 30 talented teams. The Quincy High School president's math team demonstrated exceptional problem-solving skills, strategic thinking, and collaborative spirit. This year's playoff qualification was a first for the team, who have been members of the league for the past 3 years. Thanks to Coach Laurie Cannon and team members Ramona Benzel, Jacob Chan, Abhiri Chandra, Edward Chen, Imam Habib, Yulin Lin, and Lucas Snow. And of course, our student representative, as you know, is Maradula Suginathan Yamina is a part of the team, as well as Min Tan Tran and Matthew Wong. Again, congratulations and best of luck as you progress on that team. Next is at the recent Skills USA District 3 competition, 45 Quincy Public School students participated in a variety of competitive events, showcasing their skills and dedication to their respective trades. 10 Quincy High School students earned medals for their impressive performances, and 8 of these medalists have qualified to advance to the prestigious Skills USA State Leadership and Skills Conference, scheduled to take place in May. Congratulations to the following students: John Hune, bronze medal in Information Technology Services; Bradley Chason, bronze medal in Internet Working; Solana Selinger Batista, silver medal in Criminal Justice; Ali Al-Rakabi and Ahmad Ansar, for the silver medal in Cybersecurity; Catherine Malyanga, Regina LaRusso, Anna Sofia Valenza Acevado, and Gianna DeBona, silver medal in Health Knowledge; and Elizabeth Wong Wywament, gold medal in nursing assistance. So congratulations also to the members of the North Quincy Varsity Jazz Ensemble for earning a silver medal at the recent Massachusetts Association for Jazz Education State Finals. Individual outstanding musicians as selected by the judges are Nathan Aronoff, tenor, sax alto; Johnny Chen, clarinet, trombone; Viana Garcia Pizarro, voice; and Dave Jean Philippe, bass. Congratulations to all of these students. Great accomplishments. Next is upcoming Quincy Public Schools and City of Quincy events include the following. North Quincy High School will face off against St. John's Prep in the first round of season 16 of WGBH's High School Quiz Bowl show on Saturday, March 29th at 6 p.m. Best of luck to the team, and we will, of course, update you on their progress through the tournament. Historically, they've done a great job, and I'm sure they will continue to do so this year as well. The Atlantic Middle School players are presenting the musical Mean Girls on April 4th at 7 p.m. and April 5th at 2 and 6 p.m. in the school's auditorium. In celebration of Quincy's 400th anniversary, there will be a historical family walk on Saturday, April 5th, starting at 9 a.m. from Adams Field. Students and families, staff, and community members are invited to join as we explore 15 local landmarks. So I certainly encourage you to attend this great and fun event. The next Parent Academy on Behavioral Health Navigator will be held on Tuesday, April 8th at 6 p.m. on Zoom and feature local community partner-based state community services. Finally, the combined high school choir concert will be held on Tuesday, April 8th at North Quincy High School at 6 p.m. and the combined high school band concert will be held on Thursday, April 10th at 6 p.m. at Quincy High School. With that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have old business. First item is School Committee Policy 557, motor vehicle idling on school grounds, which is ready for a roll call vote. Mr. Guttrow, would you like to say anything? Sorry. There you go.
All set. Yeah, no, we took this up in subcommittee. We talked about it at the last meeting. It's set for the vote tonight. I thought we had a productive discussion, so I will make a motion to approve.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Bergoli, second. Mrs. Lebo? On the motion.
Thank you. As per our conversation last meeting, I just wanted to remind anyone who's watching tonight that we talked about, while this is our policy on the books, we're also going to do some kind of communication, some clear communication to families and parents, both at the start of the year and maybe just before the real cold weather hits, reminding them again what our idling policy is when they're picking up their children. And I just, again, want to say my uncomfortability with the penalties, the fines that we have on here, but I understand that it is law, state law on that, but that we're going to be a little not seeking to enforce that in a hard way on any family so that they don't have to feel it's a hardship financially for them. But we are going to do a good job communicating that out. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
You all set?
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent, roll call vote?
Mr. Begoli? Yes. Mrs. Cahill?
Yes.
Mr. Gattro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubley? Yes. Mrs. Lebo? Yes. Mrs. Perdios?
Yes.
And Mayor Koch? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the superintendent's goals for 2024-25. Also, roll call vote. Do we have a motion? Motion? Motion, Mrs. Lebo. Second? Mr. Guttrow? All set? Ready for a roll call vote?
Mr. Begoli? Yes. Mrs. Cahill?
Yes.
Mr. Gattro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubley? Yes. Mrs. Lebo? Yes. Mrs. Perdios?
Yes.
And Mayor Koch? Yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now we're at new business, and item A is reopening of the Della Chiesa Early Childhood Center. Dr. Perkins and Ms. Loftus. I'm turning on all the microphones, so hopefully two of them work. And it doesn't.
Good evening. Oh, there we go. Thank you for having us. So we are here tonight, to share our proposal for the reopening of Emilio Della Chiesa, and I have here with me Janet Loftus, the principal of Lincoln Hancock Elementary School, because the proposal that we're going to present for you tonight to discuss absolutely directly impacts the school at Lincoln Hancock. And so Janet has very graciously agreed to be here with me tonight to talk about some of the spacing concerns and how bringing this building back online will help address some of those concerns. And so our proposal for you to consider for the Della Chiesa building is that in the future that we would have additional pre-kindergarten classrooms, particularly for the West Quincy area, because we feel that that is a really high need. And so that we were looking at 3 integrated half-day pre-kindergarten programs. And what that means, integrated, is an inclusive classroom. It is 8 what we would consider typically developing peers and 7 students with disabilities. Our half-day model is what we currently have. We are also proposing 2 full-day integrated pre-kindergarten classrooms, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is, but I know that we have discussed with this committee that we've been working on the CPPI grant, and we have collected, and at some point at a future meeting, we will present to you the needs assessment and the data that we've collected. And in general, I would say the data really really supports that parents want a full-day program and they want an integrated full-day program. We currently do not have that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that slide. We are also proposing moving 6 classrooms from Lincoln Hancock to Emilio Della Chiesa. Those would be kindergarten classrooms. And also adding a transitional kindergarten to Emilio Della Chiesa, moving that from Atherton Howe. Atherton Howe has a very large population of students with disabilities in substantially separate classrooms. We did have to move the second transitional kindergarten classroom to Atherton this year because of space issues at Lincoln Hancock. And we really would like to provide that opportunity back for those students, and also to kind of spread the program a little bit so that we're addressing both ends of the city in terms of the transitional kindergarten. And so in front of you, you do have just the floor plan for the Della Chiesa. So I just wanted to go through what the space does look like and will look like. So this is the first floor, and you can see the multi-purpose room is in the middle, and around the edges are the classrooms. And on the corner there, over on the left-hand side, is the community space. Those rooms were broken into 2 classrooms. They are very small classrooms. They would not be big enough for kindergarten classrooms. So we are proposing, when we think about this, that we think about that for therapy spaces. There's bathrooms over there, and there's also offices off of that community space. And so for things like OT, speech, PT, that really would be a wonderful area. And then the second floor, you have the rest of the classrooms. There are 14 classrooms altogether at Della Chiesa. The 2 that are in the middle there that are labeled 8 and 7, those are small classrooms. You see that there's like storage, bathrooms and storage areas kind of in the middle of the classroom space. So they are broken up spaces. So in Della Chiesa in the past, they were used for therapy spaces, and all of the therapists shared those spaces. And so here we are proposing that we consider using those spaces for library, EL, and special education classrooms. And so that would basically bring the total number of classrooms down to 12 classrooms between kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, and which is what I shared with you in the proposal page in a previous slide. So now I will pass it to Janet.
Thanks. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, everyone, for having me. As you all know, and we've said before during school improvement plans, Lincoln Hancock is a different building, built in the 70s with open classrooms. Out of 30 homerooms, only 8 have doors and walls that go from the floor to the ceiling. So there are concerns when you talk about actual learning environments. 3 of the classrooms that we have are not behind a locked space. While these classrooms do have doors, it's a high traffic area from parents coming in on the Water Street side, which is technically downstairs, through the building and upstairs to get to the main offices unattended. Right now we have grade level homerooms that are split between floors with 6 homerooms at each classroom, at each grade level. We cannot fit them all on the same floors, so we do have some outliers, which can be hard for collaboration as well as just management. On the 3rd floor, we have 2 classrooms in the middle of the floor that have been built from nothing, which is so impressive, and they're lovely. But what happens is we have the perimeter of the building housing 9 to 10 homerooms, upwards of 180 children, and now 2 homerooms plopped in the middle, so another 40 to 45 children, all open. Our highest need students, and we've talked a lot about that, at Lincoln Hancock, our EL students, our special education students, our students receiving literacy services, those service areas are shared, created spaces that are open. They are loud. They are not their own space. For instance, I have a special education classroom that is a sliver of a space between 2 kindergarten classrooms. To say that those students really have to pull it together in order to focus on what they're doing when they're receiving their intervention services it's a challenge. In summary, the learning environments, particularly our students with highest needs, are just not ideal. As we look at growth, we look at data, this is something that is glaring. The photos that you see are a sample of our student support areas. The photo on the left is the special education space. So on the left side of that partition, with the beam in the middle, is where we're servicing 8, 10 children, and to the right is one of our kindergarten classes with 22. To the left of the projector is another kindergarten class. And as you can see, I took that photo from the hallway, so it's just open to the hall. The middle photo is a, excuse my photograph skills, it's a panoramic. So the left arrow is one EL class that has approximately 10, 11 children in it. Then if you're standing in the same spot, this is a literacy space that houses about 5 children for intervention services. And then the arrow to the far right is another EL space that houses about 10. Now, if you're looking at that and you turn to the right, you're now looking at the photos on the right side. Another EL space that is split in half, each with 10 on each side. So when you start to add up the number of children in this open space receiving services at the same time in the middle of the floor, it just, again, shows that there is a little bit of a need in terms of a better learning environment for these students. For our proposal, the main priorities would be all classrooms moved back behind the locked space so that when people enter the building, they are not crossing paths with students. We would have our grade 1 classes on the same floor. Right now they're split. Grade 2, we would be able to house together as well. In grade 3, the classes in the middle would not have to be in the middle of the floor. We would be able to get them on the perimeter, which would be a little bit quieter. Students would have larger, quieter spaces for their support services because we would be able to move them into classroom spaces. And finally, the special education students would be prioritized to make sure that they are in a learning environment that is a little bit more isolated and quiet to make sure we're meeting their needs from start to finish.
One of the other things we probably should have pointed out too is that one of the spaces that has become gradually smaller and smaller and smaller is the library. So the library is practically non-existent at Lincoln Hancock. It's basically a hallway at this point. And so I think that being able to, when I went to Lincoln Hancock, that middle section was a beautiful library. So being able to return that to a library, I think would be another huge benefit of this proposal. And just some additional concerns for your consideration. So currently, Quincy Public Schools does not offer a full-day integrated pre-kindergarten option for families. We are applying for the next round of the CPPI grant, which is currently, they're telling us it's about $750,000. Hopefully we'll get it. We would love to be able to offer some full-day integrated classes for our families. The only option for full-day pre-kindergarten are the substantially separate CARES classrooms right now. And so we do have some concerns with that. So increases in the number of special education services, students served in substantially separate classroom program end up as a result of that is the only option. So even, students that are, might have been able to handle an integrated classroom, but they need a full day, the only option is a substantially separate CARES program. And so that makes it really difficult once we put students in the CARES program for them to then transition into a general education setting as they move on. It just becomes more and more challenging. And as a result of, what's kind of happened over the years, we have approximately 23.8 of our eligible special education students are served in a substantially separate program. The state rate is 13.2. So in our most recent coordinated program review, we were actually cited on that, and it is something that we are working on and, trying to figure out thoughtful ways to increase our inclusion opportunities, eventually with the goal of obviously moving students out of substantially separate if they can at all do the least restrictive environment. And we know that parents are looking for a longer school day for their 3 and 4-year-old children. As a result of the needs assessment that we just completed, we did get that information. 44% of the families surveyed for the CPPI needs assessment shared that the hours of the Quincy Public Schools part-day program did not meet their needs. And just one additional fact that actually Laura shared with me today is that we currently have 200 students on the wait list for pre-K in Quincy Public Schools. So it is significant, you know, and you know, we're looking for creative ways to work with those families and get students what they need. But, you know, we definitely think that this proposal would help with both of those areas. And so with that, we will answer any questions.
Mrs. Lebo?
I agree that it's a challenging environment. It really is. I mean, I've been hanging around that school for many, many years, and it is a very challenging environment. So I think some of those proposals are really necessary to make sure we're giving the kids the services that they need. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to teach in those spaces, really. The teachers are miraculous that they've been able to do it. And I don't think we're solving that problem still. We're just making it better, somewhat better. We're still not solving that problem. I don't even know if it's solvable, what we could do to make it solvable. But thank you for this work. I think it's so important. I love the idea of increasing the integrated preschool. Even for typically developing peers, it's difficult to find parents who have the time to drop those kids off for 2.5 hours and get back and get them. So it's been difficult on both ends to find kids who can do that. So I think this is an amazing thing. I think anything that serves that population is the right thing to do. So thank you very much.
Paul?
Perkins, you said the parents were not, the hours were not amenable to what their needs
Right.
are. Can you tell us what they were looking for? And
They're
how-
looking for a
and
full
how-
day. So they're looking for at least a 6-hour day, 5 days a week. Some families are actually looking for an 8-hour day, just because families work. It's unusual now for, you know, there to have the ability for a family, like a parent or a guardian to be able to stay home, you know, with their children. So to be able to do that drop off, the drop off for pre-K currently in Quincy Public Schools, the morning program goes from 7:35 to 10:10, and the afternoon program goes from 11:10 to 1:50. So if you are, so as you can imagine, where we do a better job probably filling our morning program, but the afternoon program, being able to do that drop off in the middle of the day is next to impossible for a lot of families. So they're looking for a full day program in just, you know, better hours, more conducive to families at work.
And I'm concerned about the unlocked classrooms. How is that going to be addressed?
The city has done a beautiful job. We have, every floor is locked. You cannot get anywhere without this key card at Lincoln Hancock. The stairwells are locked unless you're within the locked space. So in terms of the second and third floors that have open space, you can't get into those hallways because those doors are locked without a key card. The 3 classrooms that are on the outside of those doors and those hallways do have doors that lock. So when children are in those spaces, they are shut. But it is just a different building. And, you know, as we got all these key cards back when that happened, they really did take care of Lincoln Hancock in terms of not being able to move around the building without these cards.
And just one more question. The resource officer, is the resource officer there part of the day? Can you give me?
Not regular.
The resource officer goes there as needed, but it's not, I mean, Janet does a phenomenal job, as does her staff, so it's not, you know, typically needed. But but Brian Mahoney, who works with the elementary in the middle, is always available. He is everywhere and all at once. I don't know how he does it, but he does a great job, and he's there whenever we need him.
Yeah, I was just thinking the presence of a resource officer in the building or just walking around is a deterrent.
Oh, the kids definitely know Officer Mahoney. He's a presence. He's a very positive presence. He's great. I mean, I honestly cannot say
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
good things
yeah.
about him. Yeah, he's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will start by concurring that Officer Mahoney he's fabulous. He's really great. Heard a lot of positive things from families regarding him as well. This is a great proposal. It sounds fabulous. And anything that adds more full-day integrated pre-K, I think is wonderful. One thing I hear from parents all the time is the need for earlier care, and especially earlier in the day. Care is definitely something I hear a lot, and full day is definitely I hear a lot. So, so thank you very much for the presentation. And I think this would definitely be very helpful for our teachers, our students, and our families. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins and Mrs. Loftus, for the time that you put into this proposal, the work you put into it, for sure. And definitely that there are areas at Lincoln Hancock that need addressing. Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you for showing those photos. And I have heard how overcrowded that is. So I sort of have a couple comments, and we haven't really seen this proposal until just now. So they're probably going to be a little jumbled in the order in which I kind of discuss them. But so sort of separate from the proposal, we have overcrowding at many different schools across the city. We have had presentations by the superintendent with the enrollment data, and there's many schools that are in the red. So Lincoln Hancock, while obviously the need is there, the need's there at other schools too. So I guess I'm a little confused as to sort of how this concept and this proposal came about, where I feel like sort of this body is the one that should really be discussing the overcrowding across the district and what we should do about it, kind of on a 30,000-foot level. We have overcrowding, like I say, at many different schools. We have other issues across the district that we could be talking about and be discussing at the same time. We have longstanding inequity. I mean, Lincoln Hancock's here before us. They don't have their fifth grade anymore because of space issues, similar to Clifford Marshall. So we have this longstanding inequity in our system that our 10-year-olds at those two schools are in middle school. So, in 9 of the other elementary schools, they're not. So we have that longstanding inequity that we could fix. We have 2 QPS-owned buildings. We have the Della, Chiesa, and we have St. Mary's, currently both empty. We haven't redistricted in close to 40 years. So it sort of feels like, and we also have a facilities subcommittee meeting, or subcommittee rather, that hasn't met in quite a while. So it sort of feels like this kind of stepping back from this proposal. The proposal's, solid. It would certainly help a lot of different of those issues, but it feels like we're biting off a lot here. We're biting off space with this proposal, reworking classroom spaces, full-day pre-K, and inclusion opportunities for special ed kids. That's a lot to put in one proposal for one building when we haven't really looked district-wide at what we're doing. This isn't addressing overcrowding at any of those other schools. If full-day pre-K does come down the pipe, there may not be enough room if we put the kindergarten kids there to expand that program at the Della. What about fifth grade? Can we use that building at any level to try to bring those fifth graders back to elementary school at Lincoln, Hancock, and Marshall? So for me, I'm really uncomfortable moving forward with any plans in the Della Chiesa until we sort of look district-wide at a master plan for what we're doing. I just read the Quincy Sun today. There's 58 new units coming to West Quincy. I'm assuming they're going to have children in those, so where are these kids going? So I just sort of want to be a little bit more intentional and smart about the way we're planning what we're doing with our spaces before we kind of put this Band-Aid on a problem, and then it's there for 20 years like we did for the fifth graders. We move those kids over because of space. 20 years later, they're still there. So I'm uncomfortable moving forward with this until we do that survey, which a couple of years ago, you guys might remember that I had asked for a survey to be done of all of the ways we could get fifth graders back, which sort of goes into this, how we deal with overcrowding and sort of master plan issue, especially if we're bringing in full-day pre-K. So I think we need to go back to that study and find out where that's at. I know that, Mr. Mayor, you had some money put aside for that at some point. I believe it was $100,000 when I looked back at my notes. I really think that we should have that survey first, and then this body should deliberate how we're going to handle this instead of just voting on this proposal, which is just one part of what we really need to be doing. This is our job to, that's why we're here, to sort of fix these bigger problems. So that's my 2 cents on it. It's not to say that the proposal doesn't have merit and isn't valid, and I appreciate your work, for sure. I just think that we have to kind of step back a little bit and talk about it in a bigger sense. Thank you. Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry, my last thing I wanted to just make sure I remembered to say. So if we moved kindergarten from Lincoln Hancock to Della, I just want you to follow the path with me. So a family would send their child to kindergarten at Della, 1st to 4th at Lincoln, 5th at Southwest. If they're in the APC program, they're moving to Central for 6th through 8th, then they're going to high school. So that's 4 schools that they're attending before high school, when if you go to school in Wollaston or Squantum, you're only attending 2 schools. You have that continuity between K to 5 that you won't have the opportunity for in Southwest Quincy. So it's things like that that are long-term effects of doing something like this that does sound good on paper. So thank you.
Thank you. A couple of things. One is, how many students are in Lincoln Hancock today? What's the total body count?
We're right about 565,
And then how many would be moved over to Delhi with this?
about 115.
Okay. So that space that I saw in the hallway would go away, the learning space in the hallways that, on my last visit to the schools. That was a little challenging to see. And that school was built in the 70s, and the old, Paul, you remember, Emily, remember? It was a kind of a crazy time. Those were open campus high school years, and it was a bit crazy. And I know over the years, our Public Buildings Department and Maintenance Division has been building out classrooms as best they can to help alleviate some of those situations. I think this is a good, responsible plan today for what our challenges are. I don't necessarily agree with, we got all these buildings with overcrowding. I think we have buildings that are full. And one of the issues that is different from when I was in those schools, particularly at North, I remember talking to the principal there last year, how many were in when you were here? I said, well, the big difference is the class size is smaller. The special education space is smaller. There's a lot more demand, square footage, to teach our kids and to deal with some of the challenges. So I don't think there's a perfect solution to all of this, but right now I think Lincoln Hancock is the biggest challenge, and I think this helps us to alleviate that. Now, I've been in touch with my public buildings commissioner, and the Della Chiesa needs some work. We're gonna have to come up with some capital money on the city side and address the HVA system and a number of the infrastructure issues in the building. And the times we're in, with backlogs and equipment and all, you didn't mention it, but this isn't probably till September of 2026. So we have time to continue to talk and deliberate on some of these things. We don't have to vote on this tonight. I appreciate the presentation, and I think it's the right direction. And we've also alluded to, I certainly have, a new school in West Quincy. That's why the city council authorized me to buy the St. Mary's School site for future use, because when you look at the demographics, you look at the geography, that part of the city, they go the longest distance, probably to get to the elementary school, which is a big impact on Montclair. So I know we're going to be talking, we're engaging on the city side, just for conceptual plans for this body to look at what we might be able to fit at that West Quincy site. And then that will then help us alleviate some of the challenges, particularly at Montclair, that opens up some more space for perhaps that pre-K down the road. We don't have room right now for pre-K in all our schools. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have that room without building additional buildings. And you know, we've been successful, and I'm grateful to the state treasurer and the school building authority. Obviously, we're in the ground for Squantum, and we've been successful, obviously, with a number of buildings over recent years. So we're in a pretty good place overall. And I would also say that I'm proud of the school system across the board. No matter where our kids go, they get a great opportunity, they get a great education. We get outstanding teachers and leadership and principals. So I don't know that there's a silver bullet here to fix all of those things that my colleague brought up. But this isn't something we have to vote on tonight. And I think we continue to discuss some of these things, but I think it's a good step forward. And, you know, I look forward to further discussing this. And I just want to say publicly, because that West Quincy Elementary School concept is out there a little bit. People ask me about it. And I think Emily and I talked this a couple of years ago, but I would recommend to the committee that someday that school built would be named for Abigail Adams. So just so we get that out there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Get the public.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I mean, I'm trying to think of if it's been a year or 2 years since I've been to Lincoln Hancock, but the photos really tell a hard story. And when you talk about the entrance, you're talking about the main entrance where people walk through, that it's open, right where the parking lot is?
Yeah, so the Water Street side,
Yeah.
technically the address for the school is the Granite Street side,
Yeah.
but our main entrance for families is down on the Water Street side. So if someone is picking up a sick child or dismissing someone or coming in for a meeting, they do come in the Water Street entrance through the lobby, up the stairs before they come to any one of us in the office.
And you're saying there's no security there?
So we have the security cameras outside when they ring the doorbell, like all the schools do, and that's where it ends.
But then they they go up to the office?
They come up to the office from there, yep.
And the return of that space will be library services? Is that what you're saying? Or
That space would remain the same, there just wouldn't be classrooms and students in that outside lobby space.
yeah, so I'm asking what that outside lobby space will be.
It would be a lobby.
Okay, so, understood. I mean, I appreciate the proposal, and I think the mayor said it's a proposal, so it's an opportunity for us to kind of digest it. I also understand and respect Mrs. Perdios's perspective that, you know, and I'm sure, Aaron, you and the superintendent are thinking at the 10 or 30,000 foot level about some of those inequities. I mean, the fact that any student would have to go through four schools is concerning. And we're solving one problem and maybe not looking at it a little holistically. I think the mayor, talking about the St. Mary's site, has promised that discussion should be in the mix as we think through. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pieces at play here, juggling before we get there. So I do think there's a little bit of time to figure that out, but I do hope that we have an opportunity to talk about it a little bit more in depth, maybe at a slightly higher level, to see how those pieces could potentially juggle before a vote is cast, depending on how quickly you need a vote to be cast. Thank you.
I have one question for Dr. Perkins. When are we going to, or are we going to be required to offer pre-K? When is the state saying?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's an initiative from the
I've heard
governor's
dates
office,
like
but
2030, by 2030.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything like official, like hard and fast.
But it's coming.
It seems like it's coming, so.
They're putting a lot of effort into it.
They
This
are.
is putting a lot of effort into it across the state and a lot of money behind that effort.
Yeah,
So
it's,
it looks to me like they're going to be, so I think we really need to be on a higher level, making sure that we're thinking about that too, because to the mayor's point, our schools are all crowded. And I don't know where we're gonna put, and it might be another change for those kids. But when they're in nursery school, there's already a change for them. You know, if they're into a private nursery school someplace, so. But it might be another change for them if there's a pre-K program someplace at St. Mary's or wherever. So, thank you.
Additional considerations? Our numbers of students in the high school level for class size, we self-impose that. That's not dictated to us by the state, am I correct?
School committee.
Right. So we could change that and help out that way. And I've suggested this before, and it's a touchy subject because it impacts people across the city. I mean, we might have to take a look at redistricting. I mean, it's a hard subject to address because people are attached to their schools and where their siblings went and maybe where their parents went, but we may have to do that because we are running out of space Unfortunately, we're a product of our own greatness. The better we get, the more people move into the city, and they're taking up spaces in our schools. So it's just something that we may have to look at. And then lastly, and this is like out there, but we may have to take a look at how we configure our schools in general in terms of where we put our 1 through 4s and our 5 through 7s or 8s, and maybe break that up in a different way so that maybe middle school is not the way we have it currently, because we had junior high schools before and it was different. And then we moved to a middle school concept and now that's different. So who's to say we can't change it again and take a look at maybe taking the 9th grade out of the high school and putting it with 8th grade. And I'm just thinking out of the box here and just, because there has to be a solution. There has to be multiple things we can do to try to solve this. We can't build buildings because we don't have the money, we don't have the space. We're lucky that we have St. Mary's as an opportunity to use. Unfortunately, Willard and Gridley Bryant, we're closing that into the city. We're not getting those back. So, we have to take a look at our other means to address the issue. So, and I'm not proposing any solutions tonight or proposing anything specific. I'm just saying we need to start thinking maybe out of the box a little bit. Thank you.
To follow up to that, I do think if, and I know this committee has to deliberate and take votes, so I don't make any assumptions, but if we build a new elementary school in West Quincy, that will trip the redistricting at that point. I don't know that much would change right now in helping us anywhere until you have a new building to then create the room to make the moves. And so I don't think that's a solution yet. But I don't disagree with what you're throwing on the table. I think, if we were starting a school system today from scratch, I would have K through 8 and 9 through 12, just my opinion. But the point is, those are things we can talk about. Absolutely. My parents went to North, it was 7 to 12. So a lot of changes over time. So again, this is a step forward to alleviate the situation we have at Lincoln Hancock. We don't have to vote on it tonight, but I think it's a good step forward, and we should continue to have these discussions.
Yeah, I just want to give Paul credit for raising a difficult issue. And that decision will happen after I'm gone from the school committee, but I know that every 10 years, based on the city census, the city clerk redoes the precinct lines and the ward boundaries and all of that, based on what population shifts within the city. And I'm not saying that the school committee should automatically consider it at that point, but maybe there's a mechanism that we put into policy that says every 10 years after population shifts and we get the census, that we give a look at the boundaries. There might be some, hard data to look at around those times, and clearly the mayor's right. If a new school is built, that's going to trigger it as well. But instead of being in reacting mode, why not be in planning mode? And the 10-year census might be a moment to do that.
Not to be argumentative, I do think that voting somewhere is not a big deal. People buy a house to be in a certain school district, so you got to be. I think it's a little deeper dive for discussion.
You still
purposes
get
of
calls
that,
on the voting precincts.
I'm not worried about that. People vote twice a year.
Yeah. I am. Thank you.
I know, Mrs. Cahill, you probably haven't had a chance to have your comments yet, but I was just wondering, where does this go next? Like, Mr. Mayor, you said that there's plenty of time to talk about these larger issues. Mr. Bergoli brought up a number of topics there that I think it would be good for this body to have some brainstorming around, maybe in the facilities subcommittee or maybe in one of the subcommittees. But what is I kind of want to understand what the timeline is. If we have an opening date for this proposal already on the table, I feel like the clock's already started. So I sort of, I don't want to wait too long to have that conversation before we've done the work in the public building in Della Chiesa that is set up for this proposal, when we may have a discussion and decide that it's going to have a different group of kids in it. So what is the timeline from here, and when are those conversations going to happen? Just so I understand.
Up to the body to have those discussions. I mean, as I said, there's no perfect solution. But I think priority-wise, I agree with what's in front of us. I'm not gonna force a vote tonight at all, but all of these other issues that we're gonna be talking about, you may have an idea of putting something else there that may solve something else. None of these specific proposals are gonna solve the whole picture. So no matter what road we pick, it doesn't solve everything. So we just gotta keep chipping away at it. Now, Paul brings up, I never expected that out of you, quite frankly, talking about different configurations and grades. We should talk about that. But I am not a professional educator, and I know the team's got a lot on your plate. I'd ask the superintendent, is this something your teams can take a peek at in light of some of what Mr. Bergoli said, which may solve some of what Mrs. Perdio said, as far as taking a different look at it?
Yeah, I guess we would just need some guidance on, are you looking for a district-wide analysis on redistricting, or something less than that?
I think there's several
Just-
points to address,
yeah.
right? So where are the pinch points, right? We obviously have classrooms in a lobby in a school. That's a challenge, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, the fifth grade thing is a preference. That's not necessarily an immediate challenge. We can just agree to disagree, Courtney.
Long-term
but-
challenge, not
so- but-
immediate,
so-
long-term.
I guess we can break that down in any way you want.
Yeah,
The floor is yours. So we don't need an answer tonight. If you
Okay.
need some outside help, I'd be happy to provide the resources for
we
that.
can definitely, the SLT and I will meet, and we can talk about that and look at everything from potential analysis on redistricting. I agree with you that redistricting would not be possible without an additional school in West Quincy, St. Mary's. So that would absolutely trigger a need for redistricting. And what that would look like, we would bring options to you. We did our own analysis with regard to need, and obviously we're here tonight proposing that Lincoln Hancock's need be addressed immediately or as soon as possible with the use of ECC, because we feel that, and looking at all the concerns that this district is facing, Lincoln Hancock needs the help and needs it sooner rather than later. That's why we put Lincoln Hancock as a priority, knowing all of the challenges that this district is facing with regard to fifth grade and with regard to space. We felt, based on our long-term knowledge of the district and long-term needs of each and every school, that Lincoln Hancock deserved and needed the assistance first. That's why we're proposing this proposal to you tonight. I think the data and information speaks for itself with regard to the physical plant at Lincoln Hancock and why we need to move sooner rather than later to assist the students and staff at that building. So that's why we're proposing what we're proposing tonight. But we can certainly meet and discuss a greater overall review of the district and where the pinch points may be. You know from the last presentation we gave to you where the schools are, again, not necessarily overcrowded, but certainly reaching capacity. And those are the schools that were indicated as red. Again, not overcrowded, but reaching capacity. The school in West Quincy would certainly help with redistricting and realigning that and assisting with that. It may not fix all of the problems that were identified tonight, but our goal is to do the best we possibly can with what we have at the moment. And our position, my position, the SLT's position, is that at the moment, based on what we have, using ECC for alleviating the concerns at Lincoln Hancock should be the top priority. But having said that, we'll be happy to look at district-wide considerations with regard to space, but really, in order for us to do that, we do need that St. Mary's School online.
Well, I think part of what Mr. Bergoli was suggesting was not necessarily any additions, but over time, long-term plan, if we're reshuffling what grades are where, more equally distribution throughout the city, that's another
Okay.
look at it.
Well, what we can do is we can assume if you want, that we will be having a building built at St. Mary's and put together scenarios for you to take a look at where the shifting lines would be and what students would be taken from where to populate, I assume, a K-5 school at St. Mary's. We can certainly do that if that helps put together at least a basis upon which we can build for overall redistricting, if necessary, in the city.
I think that's a good start.
Yeah. Mrs. Lebo.
I just want to talk about some unintended consequences. If you move the ninth grade out of Quincy High School, I don't know how you would perform your exploratory program, which is a requirement. If you have 5 or more programs, you're supposed to have the ninth graders exploring them. So I think that there are just unintended consequences if you start making those kind of changes. And so I really think 2 things. This probably belongs in facility, but more importantly, it belongs in teaching and learning. Because what we've heard tonight was really teaching and learning driving a facility question. And that's how I want to go about it from now on, is teaching and learning driving a facility
Absolutely.
question.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can I
And
say
yes.
So this proposal here, with what all my colleagues are saying, and the mayor, and the superintendent, first of all, I believe it's an initial proposal brought to us from the research done by the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and Ms. Lofgitz. This building is here. It's an early childhood building. That was its initial use, correct? And it's alleviating a problem that we're having right now. If we were to build a new school, and I love, what the superintendent's saying, we should do a review, see what it's going to look like with the new school, how we can alleviate a lot of the space issues in some of the other schools based on that new building. But we all know, this is now. That new building, by the time we look at the feasibility, the cost, getting the shovel in the ground, having it done, could be a few years. And then we can look at if we need to change some of these things. But having a dedicated early childhood center makes sense, and especially in light of the fact that it's going to alleviate the issues that they're having at Lincoln Hancock. I mean, it's just, it's an immediate opportunity for us to address that while we are considering the other options that we have in front of us. And I think to the mayor's point, when he stated that, we have to look to you for guidance in what's best, and to Mrs. Lebo's comment, in the teaching and learning aspects. So if this is going to help those students that in this area, and then we're going to have some kids like the students that are at Atherton Howe, that the CARES program that moved there because they needed space, and we have them all in the same building. They'll have what they need. It's going to be there for them. And I understand the having to do the research to see how we can affect the whole system, but that can change too, because we don't know where people are going to be moving in, where they're not going to move, where we're going to have, the enrollment numbers change. So if we can do this, in my opinion, at this point, I trust the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the people in the building to give us their assessment of what's happening at Lincoln Hancock and the needs that they're having. And I don't think that doing this affects us going forward and making any other changes if we have to down the line. So that's my opinion. Mrs. Perdios.
Thank you. I just had one additional question and 2 points. So we moved all the pre-K to the RDLC. So explain to me why we would put any pre-K not in the RDLC.
So what we were looking at was, I hope I'm answering your question, but what we were looking at was the idea that if you lived in that area, which it oftentimes is challenging for families to, like Snug Harbor, where we have that neighborhood preschool, that we could provide that neighborhood option at Della Chiesa. We did move those classes because we knew that Della Chiesa needed work. So we moved all of those classes. If we could put some classes back there, then those students could actually stay at Della Chiesa from when they were 3 all the way till when they were 6. So that was one of the things that we were talking about. And this is our recommendation. This is what we, I understand that, the committee may disagree. We understand that, but but this is our recommendation. We also did look at the idea of moving the fifth grade. I mean, we looked at it all. We looked at moving the fifth grade back to Lincoln Hancock, but it doesn't solve any of the spacing issues at Lincoln Hancock. It's still going to have classrooms in the hallway. You're still not going to have a media center. It literally is just taking 100 kids and moving them to Della, and then 100 kids and moving them back into Lincoln. So Lincoln will stay the same if we move the fifth grade back. So that was why we were concerned about that, is because what our goal was to solve the spacing issue that it currently exists at Lincoln Hancock. And Janet and the team at Lincoln are phenomenal. I mean, any child is lucky to go to that school. You walk in that building and the vibe is amazing. It's just a great place to be. But, the kids deserve to be able to be educated in classrooms that are more conducive to, being able to do what they need to do during the day. And so those were the things that we thought about. And so I totally appreciate, Ms. Perdios, your concerns about the fifth grade. And I just want to, and I understand, that if you disagree with this, but we did look at that. And the issue was that it did not resolve the spacing issue at Lincoln Hancock. It just shuffles one group of kids, yeah.
I totally understand that, and that's why I said this proposal on its own is totally solid. It's just there are other ideas, like in addition to Lincoln Hancock, like in addition at Marshall, there are other things we could talk about to bring that back. So my comment was just, we should, as a body, be looking at the 30,000-foot view. Can we add an addition?
Totally
And
understand.
as we're moving those kids there, could we move these kids back with an addition? What would that look like? And having bigger discussions like that than just the proposal. But I do appreciate you having looked at it a little bit. And just, so that was my question. My 2 points were, Mrs. Lebo, you had suggested maybe it go in teaching and learning first, then facilities. I would suggest maybe a joint teaching and learning and facilities meeting. We could kind of have both of those conversations together where they sort of impact each other. Moving forward, I could see us having a conversation in that and having that be a meeting of the whole. That would be perfect, would be my suggestion there. And then just my amusement that the assumption that St. Mary's will be a K-5 and Squantum the assumption, and we're moving forward with the K-5, and that it's always the K-5 is the ideal, but yet the fifth grade that aren't in there is not a big deal. So it just constantly frustrates me that we say that it's not a big deal, but then every other way we show them it is. So if fifth grade and middle school isn't a big deal, maybe the new St. Mary's should be K-4. Maybe Squantum should have been K-4. But I tend to think those Squantum families would freak out if you said that that was going to be a K-4 and you'd have a line down the hall. So if it's not good enough for them, why is it good enough for our families down in South Quincy? Thank you.
Can I just make one comment? When you talk about the badges to get into the hallways and stuff, the teachers really make a concerted effort to make sure those doors are closed after they
Yes.
come in and out?
So they close automatically, and I am very grateful to Mike Dracchio. At any point, if there is any issue, if one starts to beep, which is a signifier that a new battery needs to be replaced coming down the pike, they have granite lock there that day. It is a very smooth system. That's impressive. So yeah, it's the doors, they're the big, almost fire doors, I would say, that they shut automatically. So no one props doors. It's everyone's in the same boat in terms of priority for that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That would be my only thing. Okay.
Can I
Oh,
give
yes,
just
of course.
Just a closing remark, I didn't want to leave that comment hanging. Reality, Clifford Marshall was obsolete when it was approved. Decisions were made back then, and they knew at the time there were going to be challenges. So this body's not responsible for that. Dealing with that issue, and Clifford Marshall was a new school for that neighborhood. We have a new school at Southwest. Decision was made. It was made by this body to put the fifth grade at a brand-new facility at Southwest. The building was designed for it. The school building authority approved it, and they're in a brand-new building. So whether it's a fourth grade or fifth grade transition's a transition, the same group of kids are going together. It's not like we're pulling them apart and splitting them up. So I don't want to create this image of haves and have-nots. Decisions are made over time by different bodies with different priorities. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Move on to
Thank
the
you,
next
guys.
item. Thank you, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Give you a minute. Mrs. Perkins, don't move. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the proposed career vocational technical regulation changes. I have my glasses on. Yes, okay, Dr. Perkins and Mr. Segala. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cahill, and good evening, everyone. Dr. Perkins and I wanted to take a few minutes to share a significant matter that would affect our CVT programs, our teachers, our students, as well as their families, in many comprehensive high schools and vocational regional schools across the state. On March 10th, the Board of Education held a meeting where the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education CVT unit presented proposed amendments to regulations on CVT admissions. Please know that in advance of that meeting, we were never notified of these changes, at least for comprehensive high schools, we're not. We didn't have any input, any feedback of these regulation changes. And so it was a little bit disturbing on behalf of my colleagues throughout the state, and at least the comprehensive high schools. Before you, you should have a variety of CVT admission documents, including the school committee policy, your policy, 10.53, CVT admissions. Communications from Russell Johnson, the acting commissioner of the DZ, referencing the proposed amendments to the regulations of vocational education in regards to admissions. A copy of those proposed changes. There's also 2 drafted documents by attorney Tim Norris, legal counsel for MAVA, Association of Vocational Administrators, which we, Quincy Public Schools, is an active and a voting member of that organization, as well as a sample letter of opposition from the school committee. And it's just a draft. We wanted to first start with highlighting our CVT program admissions. All students requesting admissions, and those students are incoming grade 10, to an oversubscribed CVT program will be reviewed by Quincy CVT admissions team using a weighted admissions criteria. Each applicant is assigned a score calculated from the total of the criteria of subtotals. You'll notice that on page 7 in the CVT admissions policy. Those criteria include grades, yes, earning up to 25 points, attendance, earning up to 25 points, discipline, earning up to 25 points, student statement of interest, which is 10 points, and teacher recommendations students can also earn up to 15 points, totaling 100 total points. So to give you an example, electrical. If Johnny Jones receives a 92 points total, and Stevie receives 80, Johnny would get first access to the program, and Stevie would come in second in the Quincy policy. All right? Our policy, your policy, is fair, equitable. It sets high expectations for programs and for students. It also it provides good academic and vocational standing for our students, particularly in the grade 9 exploratory program. It assists in preparing students for college and career readiness. It incentivizes students to do their very best in grade 9 before entering grade 10 in the pathway. It works for Quincy. This is an example, this slide. Over the last 4 years, the oversubscribed programs in Quincy and/or wait list. So 2024-25, 2 of our vocational programs, we instituted the admissions process, automotive technology and healthcare at North Quincy High were the 2 programs that we administered the admissions process. To give you an example, 35 students in automotive applied for the program, 25 were accepted, and 12 were placed in their second or third choice. Healthcare technology at North Quincy High, 57 applied, 37 accepted, and 15 were not accepted, but were placed in their second or third choice. In 2023-24, you'll see there was no oversubscribed or wait list. In 2022-23, once again, automotive technology was, there was a small wait list. And 21-22 healthcare technology at Quincy High, there was a wait list.
And now for the proposed new regulations, the changes. So beginning with 25-26 admission cycle, students who are entering in the fall of 2026, where there are oversubscribed programs or more applicants than there are seats, the students will be accepted for admission by a weighted lottery system. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. All of the lotteries that are conducted must be done so in a public setting. So for instance, like the auditorium at Quincy High School, they can be electronic, but you do need to provide public notice. The process must be fair and the selection must be random. And I'll talk about a little bit more about this last bullet from the regulations, but if the CVTE school or program holds at least 2 open houses and at least 3 virtual information sessions each school year, then we can require applications for admissions to contain an indication of the student interest in the CTE program. So what that means is we cannot ask students to demonstrate interest in a CVTE program or a CTE program unless we have done those meetings. So unless we have done those 5 additional meetings, we cannot ask whether or not students are actually interested in the program. So a weighted lottery system is a lottery for admission to a program in which all of the students are entered. So every student is entered no matter what. And the students who meet one additional permitted criteria are given one additional weighted per criterion. Now, well, I'll talk a little bit more about that. It is a little bit confusing, and we're really not quite sure how it's not very clear in the regulations how this is even going to look. Like, does that mean your name goes in a hat twice? We're not really sure. So a student with a weight of 2 has twice the chance of being selected in the lottery as a student with a weight of 1, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So in terms of demonstrating their interest, so again, in order to ask a student you have to demonstrate interest for us to consider you as part of our admissions process. We have to have done those 5 additional nights, which Mr. Segala and I were talking to a principal of one of the CTE schools who said that would cost somewhere around the range of $70,000 for him to have all of those staff be available and working to offer those 5 nights, just in order to ask a student, are you interested in a CTE program? And so, so the things that you can ask them to do if you've done those 5 nights is you can ask them to potentially participate in an interview, participate in a tour, attendance at a presentation by a CTE program, attendance at a virtual information session, attendance at an open house, submission of an audio, video, or presentation, personal essay, letter of recommendation, or other measure proposed by a CTE school or program and approved by the department. So these are the things, if a student has done one of those things, even if you've had the 5 nights, but they showed up for a tour, they've expressed interest, and that's all they need to do. So in terms of the lottery, again, you really cannot use any kind of selective criteria at all anymore for admissions. They tell you that if you are a school system or a program that has used selective criteria, this is basically what you can do. If a student was absent fewer than 27 unexcused full day absences over the 270 school day period, so basically that's like a year and a half. So 27, I do just want to point out, is chronically absent over that time period because that's 10%. So if they are 26 days absent, they get 1 extra weight. Again, we're not really sure what that means. Does that mean all of the names go into a hat and I have only been absent for 26 days, so therefore my name goes in twice? We're not really clear on what that extra weight actually means. And then in terms of student discipline, students who have not been suspended or expelled or suspended or expelled for more than 10 days. So if you have not been suspended or expelled for more than 10 days, you will get an extra weight. So potentially a student could end up in the lottery with, if I go to school, I go to school every day, I have pretty good attendance, I have not been suspended for more than 10 days, my name will go in the hat for being interested. Everybody's name goes in for being interested. My name may go in a second time because I have really good attendance. So now my name is in twice. This is what we're assuming. And I also have pretty good discipline, so my name is going in a third time. So that is how we think that this is written. So as I just said, the student will be assigned one additional weight. So their logic, according to the Department of Ed, is that a student with an extra weight, according to the Department of Ed, is twice as likely to be admitted via lottery, and a student with 2 extra weights is 3 times more likely to be admitted than a student with no extra weights. And that is because everybody's name goes in once. So the 2 extra weights would be for attendance and discipline. So potentially, if you have good attendance and no discipline, your name could potentially, I guess, go in 3 times, or you get 3 weights. So as I think you can tell, we oppose this. We are not in agreement with this. We definitely think that we feel, I know that I speak for Mr. Sagala, I know I speak for all of the CTE people across the state who are, I think, also pretty upset about this, that the proposed systems give students extra points for poor attendance. And another concerning thing is that I could be absent 3 days over a 1.5 year period, and I'm getting the same weight as a person who has been absent 26 days. You know, there's a huge range in there. And obviously, you know, the concerns that we have with attendance, we've talked to you about chronic absenteeism. This absolutely does not incentivize good attendance. And the proposed system, it sets no bar for the most egregious student behavior. So because you're still entered, even if you have been suspended for 30 days, your name still goes in the hat. You could still be selected over someone who has not had any discipline record. It's in the CVTE programs, in the
one particular program.
in the oversubscribed programs. So, the proposed regulations try to measure student interest, but more is needed. We just do not think that that's enough to assess whether a student is really interested in one of our CVTE programs or not. And I think most importantly, we feel that we are preparing our students for college and career readiness, where these criteria, showing up every day and being able to function and behave in our society is extremely important. And we do not want to be in the business of teaching students that doesn't matter. And because it does, and it can absolutely impact success or failure in the CVTE professions. We think it sets up a very bad precedent and sends a very bad message to our students and families. So we strongly oppose these changes. So what are we doing? We're going to continue to share that. We're talking to you tonight. You know, Mr. Sagala has certainly talked to the high school administration, other CVTE programs, his program advisory team, his business partners, to express the concern and what this could potentially do. You know, we're concerned that our business partners won't want to take our kids if there's no criteria, you know, in place, and which would be really, really a sad thing to have happen. Where we are working on, which I believe you have in front of you, a letter of opposition. I think there's many people that are also writing a letter of opposition. We would love to be able to send one from the school committee, so we have one drafted for you tonight to take a look at. The public comment period does end April 18th, and the board will vote on these regulations on May 20th, 2025. And so that, in a nutshell, is the CVTE.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I haven't heard here anywhere with the state is what's driving this? What's the point?
Yeah.
Where's the
I think there were lawsuits
problem
against
here?
2 schools. Or
There were two vocational schools in the state that weren't compliant.
So why don't we deal with those 2 high schools?
That's a good point.
By the way, just for public information, this also affects Norfolk Aggie. We get kids that go to Norfolk Aggie. It's gonna change things there as well. We pay for those students, as you know. I am so sick and tired of federal and state bureaucracies telling us what we need to do. And, you know, there's two cities comparable to Quincy. We get 70 million in local aid. They get 300. And the districts aren't even close to what we're accomplishing with Quincy Public School District. So my advice, and I'll be happy to say it in my letter, and I'll be happy to be part of a letter with this group, is go in and fix the districts where there are problems. Why create all these other crazy issues and obstacles when things are running fine and the kids are doing well? It drives me crazy. I'm sorry,
You have to
sorry.
call- You have to call your friend, Captain Craven.
She's not happy either.
So the reason this actually came up is because the regional schools have a competitive admission policy. So it's hard to get into a regional vocational school unless you meet all that criteria, but they don't know those kids. When we have kids in our school, we know who's in our exploratory program. And to take the decision-making away from the educators and the administrators in that building is ridiculous. As a vocational teacher myself, there were students that I knew would not be safe working with a patient. I know that there are students in the school who could have 8 days of suspension, and they could be unsafe to have a knife in their hand. And if the teachers recognize it, and the deans recognize it, and the student support people recognize it, then we need to be able to make those decisions. We absolutely, it's so insulting for them to say 27 days, like that's nothing? 26 days and you get an extra point? I mean, it's insulting, really, especially for the kind of time and money we put into our vocational programs. If somebody's going to be absent that long, they're going to fail. They're going to fail the program. That's all there is to it. And so I am furious at the state for doing this. I really am. I think it's difficult for the regional schools, but this is a ridiculous solution. We don't have the problem. We do not have that problem with cherry picking kids. We take all of our kids.
That's right.
And even, it's infuriating, it really is infuriating. So I'm really glad that I asked to have this on the agenda because I'm so angry about it, as an educator and as a school committee member, that they would be pushing this on us. And you're right, Erin, they don't even know. There's still questions that they don't even know. And of course, Russell Johnson's leaving. So, I'm furious about this. So I think we actually have to sign a letter. I have heard people say, call the governor's office. She's getting calls all day long, saying that, because she's not really sure where she stands on this yet either. So I think it's really important.
Thank you.
I'll send my own letter as well, but I'm more than willing to sign this one.
I'm sorry, is there a public hearing? What's the comment period?
Public comment.
Public
Just,
comment?
but there's no public hearing.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, there isn't right at this current time, but let me research that for you.
So they did have a public hearing at the 10th meeting, because people knew 4 hours before the meeting, or something like that, that the
Yeah.
regulations were changing that way. And so there was a small group, there were teachers, students, some superintendents, and some advisory board members who went to that meeting and commented. I don't think it was supposed to be a public comment, but they went to speak before the board.
Thank you.
They had initially presented this, Mr. Sagala and I sat in the initial presentation, it was a while ago, and we did not think that we were going to be impacted. And then all of a sudden,
2 days later.
these regulations came out and they were like completely different.
Regional schools and comprehensive schools are completely different animals as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Mr. Johnston is an acting commissioner?
He's resigned.
He's resigned?
He's leaving. He's had it too.
He has. I was just wondering what his credentials were. How does he get appointed to this position? I mean,
The other guy left.
who does he know? And then who are we gonna get to follow him? And what credentials does that person have? And then who are these people on the elementary and secondary board of education? You know, what,
It's being driven by the people behind Mr. Johnson. He couldn't get out fast enough because he had it. So all these wackadoos that go in this bureaucracy, I don't know, they meet in groups, whatever, and come up with these crazy ideas, but that's what's going on. I can tell you, that's why he left.
so they're unelected public officials?
That's correct.
Well, we shouldn't have to listen to them. We shouldn't. We're elected. Am I correct? Everybody agree with that? So who's the genius who decided to propose these regulation changes for admission? Is there a specific?
know, but Emily's right. At the door of the governor's offices, this will land and will stop if she gets enough opposition to this.
So right now, this criteria for admission to the program is not merit-based. Am I correct? No. Not merit-based.
You really cannot have any criteria whatsoever. There is no criteria.
Well, that's
Every
insane.
student gets put in a lottery, and it's a pick of the hat. You are not allowed to have literally any criteria.
I'm at a loss for words, because that's insane.
We
It's
agree.
insane. That's it.
I just will say that the people who are on the Board of Education mainly come from Newton and Weston. It's heavily flowed with that population, just out of interest.
Do they have programs in their community?
Oh, yeah.
They do actually have comprehensive high schools.
Mr. Guttrow?
Thank you. I don't think I've seen Mr. Segala this fired up since I've been here. He's pretty fired up. And I agree with all of my colleagues. I agree with the presentation. I mean, it makes no sense for Quincy or probably many others. And I'd support the letter. I do have a question about the letter. I just peeked at it beforehand. The last bullet in the letter talks about data, but I didn't see a discussion about data in your presentation. It says, past few months have raised questions about DESI's data. Until the data issues addressed, the board cannot rely on this data.
Mr. Guttrow, we don't know what the data is.
Oh.
We believe it's fraud. We don't know what they're using. We haven't heard from them about the data. They didn't share the data. So we don't know what the data
It's
is.
data about, that inform this policy change.
That's correct.
That's what you're saying. So, raise question. Oh, data, that was, can we put something in that says that was relied upon for
Yes.
this proposal? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be helpful, because I was wondering what data we were talking about, that was relied upon for the development of this policy. So, that's fair, that's good. Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks. I just have one quick question. So if this applies only to programs that are oversubscribed, didn't they need to voice their interest in it to get on the wait list in the first place?
Yes. Yes, they do. Yes.
So in the spring, when scheduling comes about, they enroll in they enroll in one program, but they do choose three. They top 1, 2, and 3.
So is that allowed? Because you said that you're not supposed to ask them.
We would have to try to get that approved by the board, which is something that Mr. Segala and I were talking about.
That's our current-
The freshman seminar, would that be in that list? But it has to be approved by the Board of Education. We can't just say that.
Okay, so, right, because that would be criteria. So I'm just wondering how you get to the wait list portion or oversubscribed portion of this if you haven't asked them if they want to be in it. You wouldn't know who wants to be in it. I mean, you can't just pick a kid and say, you're going to go in automotive when they're like, I don't want anything to do with automotive.
During the scheduling process, you enroll in one of your programs.
Right, I know that's how we do it now, but I'm just saying if this, with what you're saying,
That's part of
I
the
don't know if,
problem with this
yeah.
criteria, because on the one hand, they're saying you can't look at student data. To use that as criteria for placement, you can't do it. You have to go through the weighted lottery first, and that's another major objection that falls into this whole data piece that the regulations are requiring. So they're blocking us on one hand from looking at the students who are interested in the program. Only after we do the weighted lottery and identify the students, then can we look at their interest. It's absolutely backwards.
Yeah.
It's the wrong approach.
And I think that, like, right now, right, if a student was applying, say they were interested in automotive, they do have to do something to say why are they interested in automotive, right? So they have to express that in some way, with the CVT, with the application process. We would not be able to do that unless we had done the 5 nights. That would be the piece that we would not be able to ask them. So normally, like when you apply to anything, right, you might do an essay or you might do something, to say why you want to do this. We're not allowed to do that unless we've done 5 additional nights.
And could those 5 sessions, do they have to be at night? Could they be during the school day?
think the it
There's
doesn't,
no
I guess it
restrictions.
doesn't really say, I'd have to look and see if it says like if it has to be at night or not.
There's no
Yeah,
restrictions.
yeah.
So if it's during like a lunch period or SSB or something, or in theory, they could sort of do that without having to have instructors stay. Just a way around that.
Well, I actually would, I don't know what you think about this, but can't we write something in here that it's a burden to even suggest that they have to do these 5 days? It's a financial burden, it's a time burden, you know, when we're gonna do it at night, if kids don't come, you know, so can we add something like that in this letter as well? Does everyone
Yeah.
agree with that? Because I think that's also, you know, pulled it out of the air and makes us have to do something that we can't do financially and, you know, physically.
Of course.
I think that would be a good.
This is just for the oversubscribed programs.
That's correct.
Right.
So they want us to do 5 more sessions to get even more people to apply to the oversubscribed programs.
Yeah.
And then just do this random lottery that's not based necessarily on criteria or desire.
You'll have more disappointed kids.
Yeah, that,
Families, yeah.
it's just the oversubscribed programs, crazy. Okay.
Mrs. Lebo?
I think, you know, I know North Quincy's a little different, but at Quincy High School, every student sees every single program. So what else can you do for them? Then you have to bring them in 5 more nights? I mean, that's ridiculous. The students get to explore the program.
Yeah, we're not really sure, but I mean, it is, I think, noteworthy that the exploratory program is not one of the criteria that is listed under express interest. They know that these exist in comprehensive high schools, obviously.
And in every regional school, too,
Yep,
so.
yep, and so, you know, and that's not one of the options for how students can demonstrate interest. So we think that is interesting that they would not put that in there.
Me too.
Probably because they're not counting it.
But at the same point, Mrs. Lebo, I think it's referring to the regional schools because you enter in grade 9, right? So there's where you mark and promote.
But you don't get into your program until either the second half of grade 9.
That's correct.
Or grade 10. So even though they get into the school, they're not admitted to their programs.
Right.
But they don't explore all programs necessarily either.
Understood, yep.
Because some of them have 25 programs. I agree with you about the cost. And also, what do we take attendance at these things? At virtual open house, we take attendance?
You would have to.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I mean, no.
It's incumbent.
This is unfunded mandate, another unfunded mandate. I almost agree with Mr. Bergoli, say we're just not going to do it. But everybody should, it is a shock. that I agree
Okay,
with.
so if we want to send a letter, make some amendments, and we want to send it by before, what's the first date, the 7th?
The 18th.
Before the vote,
18th,
right?
maybe?
So
I think it's the 18th.
We don't meet again.
So as soon as we can. So can we do this electronically, where we get the letters with the amendment, we can look at it through an email, and then email back and say we approve of the way it is, if we need to sign it, in a timely manner,
You'd have to
you
do
know?
it separately, in other words, you can't deliberate
Yeah.
over the letter, because that would be a violation of.
But at that point, yeah.
before that.
Are we?
We're meeting before the due date.
That's
Okay.
fine.
When are we meeting?
April 9th.
Oh, okay.
And then we can, okay.
Approve the letter there.
So you
Okay.
could send, if people send comments,
Yeah.
right, and then we could have.
Have like a final version.
To sign on the
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I would like to see some comment, it's not my turn to talk.
Yeah, so if you want to revise it and send us something
We'll
different
send it through.
Sounds good.
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yep, you're on.
I'm really
Did you want to
passionate
say
about this.
something else?
I really would talk about the compromised safety standards. I think that's
Yes.
really important to mention. Certainly the unclear compliance measures. What do you mean? How do we do that? How do you figure that out? And weakening workforce readiness. I mean, our business partners do not want us to send them kids who have been absent 27 times in a year and a half.
Right.
Unexcused absences.
Right.
They could have been sick a couple of times too, or who have had 7 suspensions, or who have had an infraction that didn't warrant a 51A. Because you can do a whole lot of things in school before you get to a 51A. So it's infuriating.
So I have a question, based on what Mrs. Lebo said. Are you sharing this with our business partners who might equally express outrage and send letters?
That would be our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Send them this letter with their names on it.
Actually, they created
And ask them to
they created
send
a
it.
specific letter for other business partners,
Right.
our program advisory teams,
Right.
as well as
How many
principals.
business partners do you have? How many business
People are on your
partners?
team?
Through our program advisory team,
Yeah.
there's probably 102.
Yeah, well, I was just
102.
thinking, even a 15 or 30-minute quick Zoom call with them to
Absolutely.
fill them in on it, it will inspire them, I think.
Great idea.
And send them this letter.
Yeah.
For them to sign and send
And
along.
the other thing that I think we need to mention to the mayor's point, local control. Local control. Restore the control to us. I'm done.
So letters of opposition says April 7th. What,
Those are just draft. That was just
Yeah,
my
I think that's
timeline for
our
that.
date.
So we get
Yeah.
them done
Yeah.
and get them to you
Okay.
folks and so on.
Okay.
But what?
So the 9th, so we'll,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, thank you. Okay, and next, video monitoring for school bus safety enforcement for referral to facilities. Mrs. Hubley.
Yeah, the Mass Association of School Committees had lobbied the legislature on this, and back in December, the governor had signed on it, and so I'd like it brought into the Facilities, Security, and Transportation Subcommittee. This is for outside video cameras, just so people know. This is for the traffic that would be going around our school buses for safety.
Okay, it's going to go to facilities.
Go to facilities, yeah, thank you.
Next, we have the consent agenda, which requires a roll call vote. Motion to approve by Mrs. Lebo, second by Mrs. Hubley. I don't think my thing is working. Superintendent, roll call.
Mr. Begoli? Yes. Mrs. Cahill?
Yes.
Mr. Gattro? Yes. Mrs. Hubley? Yes. Mrs. Lebo? Mrs. Perdios?
Yes.
And Mayor Koch?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have communications, upcoming school committee meetings at 6:30 PM, regular meetings on April 9th, May 7th, May 21st, and June 11th. Subcommittee meetings at 6 PM would be April 9th, quarterly budget and finance, April 30th, special education, joint teaching and learning and policy. Reports of subcommittees, Mrs. Lebo, to review the March 19th teaching and learning subcommittee meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Cahill. Yes, we had a teaching and learning subcommittee meeting, and we were presented with a writing proposal, the writing goal for our school students K through 8, in which we are mainly 3 through 8, but what we're doing is improving our writing skills. One of the goals in our MCAS goals for this team was to improve our writing. It's been an issue for a long time, that's been brought up many times before, and now this really looks like this is going to have a significant impact. As a matter of fact, our classroom teachers are seeing the impact already. So we're really excited about that. And then we had a presentation from Mr. Marani about the 2 MCAS tests that are going to be given this year in civics and in science. The civics assessment this year is a real test, I believe, Mr. Marani, has 2 parts. One part is one deep focus on one particular topic, and the other part covers all 7 of the main topics in the civics test. The science and technology test is still, I believe, a field test in some parts. For grades 5 and 8 in both sessions, they'll complete a range of questions, and it's very cool. I hope this works because I love the kinds of questions that they're using on the science. He presented some of those to us. They're more performance-based. So we'll be looking forward to seeing how the results of those come out. And these minutes are posted online if anybody would like to read the whole thing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that's that. Right now, we're going to move into executive session, and we will not be returning. So we need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Bergoli, second by Mr. Guttrow, and roll call vote, please.
Mr. Begoli? Yes. Mrs. Cahill?
Yes.
Mr. Gattro? Mrs. Hubley?
She
Mrs.
just-
Lebo?
Yes.
Mrs. Perdios?
Yes.
And Mayor Koch. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.